What we do is we collect a lot of customer data and we try to tell a story to companies on what their customers are saying. So really, how do we help companies know their customers through data? It could be our first product is Involve.ai, which is a customer intelligence platform, and it's for customer success teams to always know and be proactive and data driven on how do they reduce churn, increase upsells and expansions, and how do they really make their customers happy. That's what we are in market for. But our vision ultimately is how do we make the world customer centric and everybody in a company know about what their customers are saying or wanting and what's next for them.
That level of visibility can be largely valuable for a plethora of types of companies. That being said, what kind of companies are you guys focused on right now? Because it seems like this is probably more of like an enterprise tool, but do you foresee that this is going to be, are you guys going to be expanding more towards mid-market, SMB even? What does that look like and currently, and then versus what you foresee in the future?
So we ran a lot of experiments around SMB, mid-market, enterprise on what would be best for us, who can adopt this the most, who can get the biggest value, and what the stickiness would be. So far, B2B SaaS companies, other companies like ours, where they're subscription businesses, I think that's the sweet spot for us. And what's really landing right now is mid-market and SME. So anything that has a startup or is SMBs, then they are a hard market because it's still small. It's all about sales and marketing for them, getting more customers. Mid-market is where you have 100, 500,000 customers and it hurts to lose them. And then there's small, medium enterprises, which might be 100 million ARR companies. They're still pretty big, but not as big as the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. So that's kind of our sweet spot that we're going after.
What's the background and the story of how you guys got there? Because it's a pretty narrow focus, or a specific focus, I would say, not narrow because it's pretty wide, but it's a very specific focus. How did you end up in that space?
You know this better than anyone, Crispy. We've been working together for many years now, but when we first started about 5 years ago, we built this volunteering and community engagement platform. I was at a big company. This is my second startup. And I really hated the big company experience. And my idea was, how do people in a big company come together around a purpose, around a vision and a mission? And we raised some seed money for it. So we built this volunteering platform where people from multiple companies can come together, do projects for nonprofits. And it got off to a good start. We had a lot of users, but we really struggled to find product market fit. And because of that, we would lose a lot of our users. We had 450,000 users, but churn was 8% month over month, which is terrible, right? We would almost lose 1/4 of our user base every year. And in 2020, we built this internal dashboard, and all it was doing is, being engineers, we said, we have all this data that we've captured about our users for the past 4 years. Can we do some analysis to come up with which users are sticky and which are not? Which users can go us and take us into their companies? We saw that there's a bunch of users from Verizon and they're paying, they're happy. Maybe there's a corporate opportunity here, and it was. So that kind of gave us some insights into collecting all this siloed data from multiple systems and understanding, is there churn risk and upsell opportunities within our base? And that's kind of how we started. And we literally had a spreadsheet, and we're using Python algorithms on the back end. We gave it to SEMrush, which became one of our first customers, and they saw tremendous improvements. They were able to improve their churn by double digits in 3 months by just using a spreadsheet model. And that was kind of our aha moment, saying, hey, maybe what we built is more valuable than what you're doing. So we decided to pivot. A little bit about me. I grew up in a very humble blue-collar family, lost my dad to cancer when I was 2. Mother washed utensils door to door. So just growing up, my mentality, or what I've been taught, and I'm sure is immigrant parents, it's never give up, right? Just keep going. You just don't give up. Giving up is not an option. So it was extremely hard because the strong beliefs that I held was you just never give up. You keep trying, and there's going to be a way. It's going to be a magic bullet, and don't listen to the market. Don't listen to the naysayers. I think that was kind of the mentality I had. And had to really fight that mentality. One of the things that emotionally that I went through was not just letting myself down, but I was really thinking about, we had this core team, and it's not that we didn't have revenue. We had almost 2 million in annual revenue, annual recurring revenue that we had, and obviously it was slow growing, but we were doing okay-ish. We had raised some money. We had some good VCs who had backed us. Everybody had bought into the vision, like amazing VCs who have backed billion-dollar companies backed into the vision. We had founders, people who had left Accenture, Microsoft jobs who were with us. So I had a lot of like ideas. I knew internally that the data is saying this is not working, like X is not working, and we need to pursue Y. But the challenge I had was I had this like ship with like VCs and employees. How do I convince them that X is not going to work? A, that the vision that we've sold you is not the right vision. And then B, we don't know what the next thing is. Like it's not proven yet. We don't have that. And I think when it goes back, and maybe you could come in here, is because when I started working with your team, what you helped us do there is give us those at bats for understanding what Y is, what the second market is, as quickly as possible. So what we did, Chris, and I'd love your help here coming in, but I kept running X for a little bit, like the first product, until we had proven that we can land some customers with the second product. We were looking at the lean canvas and really looking at like, hey, these are like our 12 hypotheses. How quickly can we validate or invalidate this? So the goal is not to understand whether you're right, but the goal is to figure out whether you're right or wrong as quickly as possible. What can you do to figure this if it's valid or invalid? And I think that and me and my co-founder, we built this like spreadsheet where we basically had what do we do? Like, what's the hypothesis? Like, one of the hypotheses, like we can easily sell $1 million in 12 months because there's a real need for this. And then we had this score which said like, how wrong can we be? Right? And it was like 1 to 5. And then the second column was how fucked we'll be. Sorry for my French, if we get it wrong. And then we would prioritize. So everything which said that, hey, we are probably really wrong about these 5 core assumptions, and it could really be bad for business. Those were the top 5 you have to quickly validate or invalidate. And what your team helped us do is get those at bats so we could get in front of those customers with curiosity and say, hey, like if this solution existed, would you buy? And would you actually pay us $100,000 for this? Right? Like, would you be able to get that done for us? And then some people were like, yeah, if this existed, like I could easily get $100,000. And which kind of, just getting those hypotheses validated and invalidated were the way that we were able to pivot so fast.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great story, man. And I know you just recently closed a Series A, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
We closed an A by Sapphire Ventures. We raised 16 million from them, and then we're doing a 6 million venture debt. So we'll have 22 million in the bank, which is awesome, right? We've been at the ramen eating days for many days, which is like part of the journey. There's ups and downs built in, and both are equally rewarding. But I think we just we were able to prove that there's a strong product and a strong market that we can go after. And that's kind of what really helped us raise this round.
As your company is growing, as your team is growing, and how do you keep everybody with the same hunger and motivation as from like as it was, pre-Series A?
I think that's also so hard, and nobody talks about this transition phase, but I'm sure you've been there and you know this. But in my last company, I remember we had some success, and then immediately I just got out and got a lot of managers, and I was like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Let me get like the best kind of leaders who are just so much better. And we failed. Like we had to literally let everybody go. I didn't know what good looks like, but I also, I don't think it's the transition is like a switch that you can turn on and off. I think one of the things that I'm doing and having talked to a lot of CEOs who are good at it is like you're constantly recruiting and you're setting a vision, you're setting goals for it, and then you're trying to backfill your team where it's needed. So you just can't walk away from everything. But right now, 3 months ago, we hired a great customer leader who does everything post-sales and strategy for us. She was an early employee at SuccessFactors, grew it to multiple billion, left to join a company called Glint, got acquired through LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn got acquired by Microsoft. So she's been there, done that. She's like an experienced leader. So it's really comfortable handing it off to her and saying, hey, you go run with this, and she's doing phenomenal. But then there's been other times with engineering, as an example, the leader we have is more of a stretch leader. So I'm still involved in making sure that the leader grows into it, can learn tough things like how do we let people go, which is so hard. Like, nobody talks about how hard it is for someone who's a first-time manager to like fire a couple of people. Like, until you've done that, I think hiring is hard, but firing is equally hard. So I think there's been a transition. I'm learning a lot, Chris. Is to be sincere, I feel I'm not great at it, but that's absolutely I have to. The stage that we're at is getting away from founder-led sales and founder-led marketing and founder-led everything to now sales-led sales and marketing-led marketing and finance-led finance. I think that's where we're at, and it's a process. I think I have 60% of my leadership team built and ramped, but I still have gaps that I have to fill and constantly working towards. So,
yeah, I mean, what would you suggest to some founders out there that are kind of like in that stage right now of going through your experience of like not seeing that growth trajectory that they had set out to? They've gone through a lot of these hurdles. They've got to the 2 million in ARR, for example, but they're not seeing that month over month growth that they would love to see. What would you suggest to them? What advice do you have in terms of how they should evaluate, the current landscape of their business and ultimately like making that call on product market fit?
I think you said it, and it's so perfect. I think it's evaluating product market fit and really just being certain that there's product market fit or not. And there might be, not saying that there's not going to be all the time, but just making sure that there's a pain point that a set of customers feel, whether it's a B2B, but especially for SaaS founders, you clearly can identify these people and that there's enough of these people. Then being able to make sure that your product actually solves that pain, because a lot of times it doesn't. Like, you're selling the vision, you're selling the story, but when people buy it, they may not. There's no active usage. They may not see the value that your product provides. But once you evaluate that you have post-product market fit, then it might just be evaluating, do you have the right team to execute and get you enough leads, really understanding the pipeline funnel. I think that's so important in B2B world, is understanding how do you even have enough at-bats. I think that is a pretty big problem for a lot of people, is they always feel like, hey, we're not getting enough conversions. The conversion rate's really bad. And then you ask what your conversions are, and people are like, it's 10%. Like, we talk to 10 people, we only get one sale. That's common. You gotta, right? That's life, basically, right? Like, you won't win every single deal. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to go out there and get 100 leads or 1,000 leads next time, so that you get enough at-bats, get those conversion rates up, improve like your average contract values. And I think there's a lot of levers you could pull, like pre-product market fit, and then post-product market fit, which go from everywhere from number of opportunities you're creating every day, every month. What's your average contract value for the opportunities? Can you increase it? And then what's your win rate? Can you win more deals that you're getting? I think those are like the three big ones you could look at.